Hi, I'm Pastor Steve, and I'd like to talk to you about an essay I've written called A Vine Out of Egypt, The Queer Origins of Western Monotheism. It's about the origins of monotheistic religion going all the way back to the Amarna period in Egyptian history. This was the time of the pharaoh Akhenaten. And Akhenaten was always acknowledged as a very unusual person because he represented himself as a woman. And he also wasn't really very interested in hunting elephants or lions and tigers. He didn't make war, even though there were insurrections happening along the borders of the Egyptian Empire. And most of the artwork depicted during his rulership was very naturalistic. A lot of depictions of family, human affection, love, and kindness. Akhenaten had a wife whose name was Nefertiti, and she was the absolute paragon of Egyptian beauty. And she actually had a son, and his name was Tutankhamun, the famous King Tut. Now, in looking at the representations of Akhenaten and the changes that happened in the Amarna period and the reactionary anger that the Egyptian priesthood showed to the memory of Akhenaten, putting all those pieces together, I've come up with a hypothesis that in fact Akhenaten was a woman, and a woman who was married to another woman, and thus we have the queer origins of Western monotheism, because one of the things that Akhenaten did was to suggest that that the Egyptian people should all worship one deity, and that there was in fact only one deity. The Egyptian priests of that time had a temple devoted to Amen-Ra, and Amen-Ra was considered to be like the principal of the gods, the chief or king of all the gods. Very similar to the way in Greek mythology, Zeus was the chief of all the gods. So the supreme in the polytheistic faith. Akhenaten was a monotheist. So we have the investigation of the queer origins because something different was happening during the time of Akhenaten. And as modern researchers, we're much more able to understand that process. The Victorians just couldn't fathom it. And so there are papers written in Victorian Egyptology about Akhenaten's deformity as he was represented looking like a woman. And why was that? What was going on? Chances are he was a woman, and that is where we get this concept of the queer origins of Western monotheism. Now, the other issues that I like to look at, because the Egyptians, even after Akhenaten, had their cult of Amen-Ra, and Amen is a word in the Bible in Hebrew and in Greek that we find in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And you know it as the word Amen, as in, Amen, brother. You know, that's a word that we all use, but it's a word that has Egyptian origins. And in looking at Amen-Ra, we also find references to a figure in Egyptian hieroglyphics known as Kefir. Kefir is the scarab beetle. The scarab beetle, that's a really popular symbol, and in hieroglyphics it basically is the word to be, and is used to describe is or being. And so this is related to an ontological understanding of the supreme deity, as in the words that the burning bush revelation spoke to Moses, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I am who I am. And so we have this little connection here, just investigating the history of the relationship between Hebraic Abrahamic faith, because Akhenaten was ruling from the year 1353 to 1336 BCE, and that is pretty well overlaid with the time of the Abrahamic influence, a little after Abraham, a little before Moses. And so there is an interrelationship there between the monotheism of Akhenaten and the monotheism that would be taken by Abraham and by Moses. And so it's just an interesting little historic piece of research, and I'd encourage you to look at it if you have time. It is at pastorsteve.faith. That's my website. So go to that website, if you will, and take a look. If you can, thumbs up this video, share it, and I thank you very much for watching.